Everyone present over here. Today is the final day of our 5-day long faculty development program sponsored by AICT. Hope all of us have enjoyed all the sessions and learned a lot of things related to emerging trends in AI and ML. Before we move on to the last two sessions of this program, we have a small announcement to be made here. As you must be knowing that all the participants have to appear for a test today to be conducted from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. I repeat, there will be a test today from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. It will be a multiple choice type exam and will be taken through Google Forms. The exam link will be posted in the WhatsApp group today. And today's attendance will be taken at 1 p.m. Today's attendance will be taken at 1 p.m. As per the protocol set by AICTE, all the participants need to fill up a feedback form in the Atal website, should qualify the test with 60% of marks, and should have at least 60% of attendance to get the FDP certificate. And we shall declare the end of the program in the valedictory session today at 3:30 p.m. So all of you are requested to join the valedictory program today at 3:30 p.m. Now let's move forward to the last two sessions of the SafeDP to be conducted by one of our speakers, Mr. Shobhasachী Mukhopadhyay from MAKAUT, West Bengal. Shobhasachী Mukhopadhyay is the Faculty of Business Analytics and Statistics at School of Management Science, MAKAUT, West Bengal. Apart from being Kolkata lead of Facebook Developer Circle, he is a Google developer expert in machine learning and Intel software innovator. Mr. Mukhopadhyay received his MS in Physical Sciences from IISER Kolkata and was the topper of 2015 batch. He was the co-founder and chief research officer of Twellit MedTech Private Limited and currently involved in startup mentoring activities. Mr. Mukhopadhyay was a project scientist at Nanoscope Technologies for a brief period of time. He was featured in Facebook's special coverage, The Limitless, as one of the India's leading innovators and entrepreneurs of 2018. He has more than 55 publications, which include patent, books, journals, and proceedings. His findings on AI-based retinal disease detection and AI-based early-stage cancer detection has been highlighted in all leading newspapers. His research success has also been featured in leading national and international tech magazines like eHealth, Analytics India Magazine, The Better India, and Biospectrum. He received several international awards, which include Best Research Paper Award, prestigious Pi Photonics Education Scholarship 2014, Most Inspiring Facebook Developer Circle Lead, and so on. Mr. Mukhopadhyay delivered invited talks, served as panelist and judge in leading IITs, IISER, NITs, and IIST Shibpur, and many leading state and central universities of India. So I, on behalf of the FDP organizing committee, would like to request Mr. Mukhopadhyay to grace this occasion by enlightening us with the recent trends of deep learning applications. Over to you, sir. Tufan sir, could you please unmute yourself? Shobhasachী Mukhopadhyay.
He has been given unmute permission. I have also asked him to unmute.
All right.
Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Hello. Achha, so thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here.
So we cannot
in this
hear
August
you.
event, and I am really pleased to. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're now audible. In middle, you suddenly got disconnected for a moment. Sir, you're not audible again.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I am thankful to the organizers for inviting me here, and I'm really feel proud to interact with this August gathering. And today's my topic is deep learning. So actually, I have joined from my phone because my laptop is having some problems. So I am trying to resolve the issue. So I am just request organizers to for excuse me for a couple of minutes, such that I can join from my laptop. And I also request the participant kindly to open Google Colab, because we will have some hands-on session regarding on the several state-of-art topics on deep learning over Google Colab. So meanwhile, I request the participants to please kindly open Google Colab and be ready with that. I am just joining back in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure, no problem. So as per the request of the speaker, all the participants are requested to open Google Colab and be ready with their laptop. Speaker will be joining soon. By the time the speaker joins, let me announce the announcement that I have already made for today's program schedule. So again, I'm going to repeat the same, that we will have our multiple choice type of test today from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. and the attendance will be taken today exactly at 1 p.m. So all the participants are requested to give their attendance in the second session at 1 p.m. and please attend the test, which will be starting from 2:30 p.m. today. The duration of the test is for 1 hour and the link will be posted in the WhatsApp group. And as you know that to get the certificate, we must qualify the test with 60% of marks and we should have at least 60% of attendance to get the certificate. And before appearing, you all of you have to go to the Atal portal to find the feedback form and please fill it up. Yes, the speaker is here. Sir, kindly unmute yourself. Sir, please unmute yourself. We cannot hear you.
So you will be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Am I audible to all of you? Clear?
Absolutely. It's clear. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much for giving me the time to settle down the issue. So let me share the screen. So before that, I just want to give a brief introduction overview that nowadays we are talking about data science, business analytics, machine learning, deep learning, but what is the basic motivation behind that and why we are so much inclined on this type of analytical tools and platforms? So basically, you see that from our common sense, those who are the new in this field, for them, I am just trying to explain the scenario in very lucid language, that from our common sense, we all know that nowadays we are not storing data by pen and paper. It's a root fact. And you know that we are using a lot of digital platforms, you see. For example, storing data, analyzing them, interpreting them. Now, once you are continuously using some digital platform, digital mode and digital means, so once to interact with them, we require certain languages, obviously. Like, for example, whenever our human being, we communicate with ourselves. So either we communicate via Bengali, Hindi, English, whatever may be our language, primary or secondary language. According to that, we communicate with ourselves. So in a similar fashion, to communicate with the system, it's a hardware system. It can be laptop, it can be desktop, by which we are basically trying to interpret our result. So it then in that case, you also require some sort of language to interact with computers, and R, Python. Those are those types of the platforms which will give you that type of access to make your statistical data interpretations and all those things. And apart from that, also there are another method, another way, which is little sort of non-technical. Even people, those who are not very much smart in coding or who are not much aware of the coding, they can also handle it. And that is some data visualization tools. For example, Tableau, Power BI, and a lot of high salary jobs are also associated with that. So the main funda is that as we are storing data digitally, we have to explore the digital platforms. In order to get some access, we require to know some sort of the programming languages. Okay, so this is one thing. And the second thing is that we are storing data. Now, for example, nowadays we all know we are storing data in cloud. We are deploying some analytical algorithms there, and we are making some interpretation from the cloud-based platforms. Okay, so we expect to have some real-time analytics, to deploy real-time analytics. So at an instant, you can get certain updates. So right from the if you see the several domains, for example, whether it is agriculture, whether it is healthcare, or any other domain, you see which are the prominent requirements for the Indian scenario. We are exploring them. We are getting meaningful insight from those platforms. Okay, now continuously storing data in cloud, what happens that sometimes it creates congestion, and which results in latency. And due to that, we also go by some other alternatives, from, for example, fog or edge computing, especially edge computing, which we call the on-premise computing. We take the benefit of that, where we don't have the so much processor power. Okay, we have the very few low processor devices, where we have to deploy certain tricky algorithms, such that you can deploy the simple tasks there, and rather complicated tasks can be done in the cloud. For example, if you are using smartphone as your edge devices, so basically you can tackle it as this low processor device, okay, by computing certain simple load of computation there. So what it will happen, that certain amount of the load from your cloud will be reduced, and you can do some sort of the computation there. Okay, so this is how you can see the scenario is progressing, because you see, as we are storing data from the every resources, because you see all across the globe, we are now there are a lot of IoT based sensors are there. We are continuously collecting the real world data. So you see that due to that, what is happening now, the number of the stars in the universe is equal to the number of bits in the digital world. So you can see, and the expansion rate is exponential. It is getting double day by day. So that's the reason there is so much requirement of the skills on big data. People are talking about deep learning. People are talking about NoSQL scenarios, because earlier days it was all about, when the 70s we started to explore computer in large extent in not only in India and across the globe. We were mostly relying on the relational databases, but gradually from the 90s era, when we came up, it's all about the open source era started, because 1989 Python was launched, in 2001 R was launched, and those are the open source era. We gradually started to relying on the open source era, and after the arrival of the World Wide Web, we gradually started to explore on the social media. So what happens that due to that, whenever you are posting certain images or videos on the social media, it can be LinkedIn platform, it can be Facebook, it can be Twitter. So we have started to generate the unstructured data. And mostly whenever you are logging in Facebook or LinkedIn, or even you are sending certain email, so what is happening, your login time, activity time, and the logout time, that is stored in a structured manner, tabular format. That is in the relational database mode. But Whenever you are writing text, you are sending images, you are uploading videos. That is the unstructured part. So in a combination of that, we are generating a lot of semi-structured data. So current world is all about the semi-structured data. Okay, so I hope the picture is now quite clear to all of you. First of all, we are storing data digitally. That's the reason to interact with computers, we require some sort of languages. For example, R, Python. Even there are availability of the data visualization tools are there. So for example, Tableau, Power BI, those are the data visualization tools. And the growth of the digital world is in the exponential rate. Okay, that's the reason a lot of requirement of these skills on the big data is nowadays required. And let me tell you, not only Hadoop, nowadays R is also clubbed with Hadoop. R Hadoop facilities are there. People, those who are aware of the R, you can explore the capabilities of R Hadoop. It is providing amazing flexibilities for handling the big data. And along with that, what I am saying that there, for example, those who are the data engineers, they are nowadays getting a lot of high salary job in terms of the NoSQL domain to tackle this type of semi-structured data sets. And even at the graph database nowadays is getting a lot of popularity. One of the Neo4j is one of the prime enabler of that. Okay, so this is the basic background that if you are new to data science domain, how you can actually explore yourself, okay, and what are the potential opportunities are there in this domain, right from the academics to industry. This is the basic background, because those who are maybe new to this particular domain, they require this type of the basic background information. And you see the popularity is so much nowadays. You can see that even a lot of BTech program on AI or data science you can hear, MTech program is there. Even people has expanded it in the management domain also. You can hear BBA or MBA programs in business analytics. You can hear some people are also giving it, then they directly name as the data analytics or data science program. So you can see that in every domain, science, technology, management, it is getting high popularity. The prime reason is that we are storing data digitally, as simple as that. Now, regarding today's session, as I already told you, and those who may join later, I am requesting the participant to kindly open Google Colab. And once you are opening the Google Colab, you will see one option, new notebook. Kindly open that. Okay. So I will share this Python notebook with organizers. They will share with all of you. But meanwhile, if in some cases, wherever possible, you can write some small amount of the codes in Google Colab, you can run them. It will give you a lot of confidence. Those who are new in this space, especially those who are new in this particular field, they can also learn by doing some hands-on session. It will be better for them. And I want to thank again the organizers, because you see, in my earlier talks, those who have attended my earlier talks, and even in IEM or any other academic institute, that basically I always emphasize one thing, that can we come up with some impactful solution, impactful product-based solutions, which can create impact on the bottom of pyramid zone? Because you see, across the globe, there are more than 80% people under the bottom of pyramid category. In India, it is more than 96%. So whatever the limited capacity we have, somebody may be very good in Android app development, somebody may be very good in blockchain, somebody may be very good in IoT, somebody may be very good in machine learning, or have some standard knowledge. So can we explain now? Can we explore our capabilities to create impact on that zone, such that if we can develop certain meaningful solutions? So I have demonstrated in my earlier talks about certain some sort of the whatever the product we have developed, what are the pathways we have followed, that I have discussed earlier. But the thing is that those span of power of those talks were 1 hour hardly, and on those shorter span, it was not possible for me to give you some hints, to give you some idea that how whenever you are programming, whenever you are coding, how can you tackle certain scenarios? Because you see, whenever you are writing codes, there are several factors are there. First of all, one is the processor power. Okay, whether you are implementing in CPU or GPU, or whether you are making it a combination of a lot of GPUs, or whether it's a CPU GPU based combination is there. Second one is what is your front end language, how you are interacting with backend. Okay, for example, PyTorch. PyTorch is a Pythonic platform, and highly appreciated by the academic fraternity. It's a deep learning framework and highly Pythonic, but at backend it has the C++ support, and due to that it is so fast. Your execution becomes so fast. Okay, so those factors are always there, along with the time complexity. Okay, so basically, for example, you are analyzing n by n image, so your order of complexity goes n square. What about unfolding it or vectorizing it in a horizontal or vertical directions? So image is in matrix format. For example, you're in first row, it is ABC, second row DEF. You're unfolding it in horizontal or vertical direction, it becomes ABCDEF, either horizontally or vertically. So you are basically vectorizing it. So what is happening now? Your order of complexity reduces from order of n squared to order of n. So time complexity, your implementation platform, your front end, what is there in front end language, and on how you are connecting with back end. So those things always plays a very important role to give you the real time updates, real time analytical updates, and how can you make those tricks to get the instant update, which portion you should deploy in cloud, which portion in your edge devices. So these type of scenarios are always there. Okay, and those things we will explore through hands-on coding today. And obviously we are not going to make any product, but I believe that those who are quite product inclined mindset up, they will get some sort of the very fruitful hints that how to tackle those scenarios. Okay, and along with that, those who are the very academic enthusiastic researchers, everybody, I believe that will get some sort of idea that in which scenario how we are dealing. Okay, and today I have that type of the time span, thanks to the, as I am always saying, I am thankful to the organizers to give me two subsequent session, such that I get some time to give you some demonstrations. Okay, and which you can explore by yourself and get some idea that how to explore it. Okay, and which way we can think our mental framework, that if we follow this path, or if you try out in this way, we can optimize our code in this way, or if we follow that particular path, we can get that sort of output. So that type of framework, that type of frame of mind will be developed, and I believe that that is going to help you a lot. Okay, so let me share the screen and kindly be ready with your Google Colab. Okay, thank you. So like I was saying, that in deep learning, we deal with the large data sets. Okay, so data in order of, whenever we go data in order of 10 to the power 5 almost, that is the perfect setup for deploying deep learning. And before that, below to data in order of 10 to the power 5, it is okay with machine learning. There are a lot of amazing tools are there in machine learning you can explore. Okay, and that is going to give you a optimum solution. So basically, the factor which actually makes the deep learning so much robust, that is the activation function. So basically, whenever we go for the machine learning based approach, so sigmoid function tan hyperbolic is there. The concept when arrive, it is all about the mimicking human activity. Okay, so cognitive activity of our neurons. Okay, the artificial intelligence first came up in 1940s, but gradually people started to writing the lot of mathematical develop the mathematical aspects, and we came up with lot of robust solutions one by one. Okay, so basically due to that, the new lot of new methods we get in machine learning, and in particularly in deep learning, the one of the most famous development which has been made in 1989. One of the paper was written by our Ian LeCun. Okay, and we came up we came to see Linnet. Okay, and
Excuse
which
me,
is
sir.
one of the very hello.
Excuse me,
Am I
sir.
audible?
Sorry for the interruption. Yes, you are absolutely audible, but unfortunately, we
Acha,
cannot
is the
see the
screen visible?
screen. No, no, this is not
Okay,
seen from our end.
okay. Let me reshare it again. Can you see it now?
Not yet, but
Can you see the Google Colab, which I have opened the Google Colab page?
no, not yet.
Any of the participant can see it? Because it is showing that it is the, just a second. Your screen sharing is paused. It is saying
Participants,
it is,
if you wish, you can write in the chat box. Yeah. No, sir. Participants are also writing that they cannot see the screen.
just a second.
Yeah.
Acha, am I given the permission to resume the set? Because I can see it is saying, it is showing that your screen sharing is paused. But I have shared it from my end actually. In my screen, it is showing that your screen sharing is paused. But I have shared it because it is giving the options of stopping share.
Yes, we can see a
Uh,
blank screen.
if you
Please go
want,
ahead.
I would request you to unshare the screen and reshare it. It might be that
Hmm.
something went wrong, and
That
Zoom automatically shifts the
yes.
screen sharing to pause.
Just a second. I am resharing it again. I have already done it. It was showing
Yes,
that.
sir.
Can you see it now?
No, sir, it's still showing started screen sharing, but then it's basically a
Okay,
blank screen.
I think it will appear. I think it will appear soon, I guess.
Okay, let us
Because
wait for a few more seconds.
just give it 1 minute time. I think it will appear in front of you. Okay, because it is now showing that you are screen sharing. Earlier it was showing your screen sharing is paused.
Okay.
So I believe it should appear in front of you. Is it coming now?
Yes, sir, it has appeared. So participants,
Okay.
please
Okay.
confirm in the chat
Thank you.
box.
Yes, this is visible now. Yeah.
Kindly cross check with the participants. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Thanks
sir.
for your help. So basically, I was saying that, so those who want to explore their career in deep learning or data science domain, basically you try to explore your knowledge in linear algebra, a little bit of linear, especially the eigenvector eigenvalue calculations in terms of matrices, and a few important concept on vectors, basics of the statistics, along with the probability. For example, Bayes theorem is very important on the basis of the lot of dynamic Bayesian models. For example, hidden Markov model. Those are on the basis of the Bayes theorem. So, like I was saying, that and along with that, you can develop your skill. Especially, it will be better if you know Python, because all the deep learning platforms are quite Pythonic. Okay, and data visualization tools like Power BI and Tableau, any of the data visualization tool will be good enough. Okay, and R, if you know, that is also fine. It has extensive support in terms of the statistical data processing purpose. So now we will see the scenarios that whenever we come to deep learning, we tackle with data in order of 10 to the power 5. It has the huge amount of the computational load on us. So how can we tackle? What are the tricks and we can deploy? So basically, in 2007, when the deep learning theory developed in 1980s, 1989, I told you about the Linnet paper. But remember that Linnet paper was was bit by other machine learning good elegant tools like support vector machine was performing better than the Linnet at that time, because that the reason Vapnik got very huge popularity in 90s, who was the basically who created the support vector machine. But what happened then gradually, as I am telling, that our data handling of the data procedure has changed in a humongous manner, because from late 90s, we gradually started to explore with internet. From 2004 onwards, we started to explore ourselves in social media. So new type of data, we started to explore with new type of data, and especially unstructured and semi-structured data, along with the structured part. So in 2012, AlexNet was developed, one of the student of the Geoffrey Hinton. So that when AlexNet gave the superior result than Linnet, and on the ImageNet competition. So in that period of time, people thought that, oh my God, there is so much potential on CNN and on those platforms. So why not explore them? So now what happened that it's not only about the mathematical development, but or the algorithmic development, but hardware support should be there. So in 2012, NVIDIA came up with GPU, and 2016, Google came up with TPU. So those set up the platform that we can go for the dealing with the high volume data. Earlier, it was not possible, although it was only mathematically possible. Thanks to Theano, they came up with one first deep learning framework in 2007, which was Pythonic. Then in 2015, TensorFlow, in 16, PyTorch. But when the TensorFlow and Theano came up, it was all about the symbolic programming. But you see the way from our college life, and nowadays those who are the youngsters, they are learning coding from the school level. So we start with always imperative programming. Our coding style is imperative. Okay, so when the PyTorch came up in the picture in 2016, so it was fully based on the imperative. Due to that, the academic fraternity becomes so much excited that we are getting something which we are accustomed with, especially the academic fraternity. So that's the reason PyTorch got the huge popularity. But you see, with the imperative platform, imperative mode, you can't develop code. And unfortunately, Python is also a single-threaded language. It's not the multi-thread. So you require to do something with the symbolic programming. Okay, and the TensorFlow, it was initially symbolic, but when they in the upcoming version from TensorFlow 2.0, they also kept the imperative essence. So whenever you are going for the product development based approach, you can incline on the TensorFlow type frameworks. Okay, I believe that now the things are quite clear. Now we will see one by one example that what is the imperative mode and what is then the symbolic programming mode. Okay, so gradually one by one you will be able to see that how we are deploying certain codes and how we are tweaking the codes to tackle these several scenarios. Okay, so let's get started. So basically, because this notebook will be shared with you, so you don't have to bother about the text part. Only you just click on the plus code sign. Whenever you are opening the Google Colab, you will be able to see some plus code pop-up. For example, here, if you see in the screen, for example, you can see one pop-up coming up, either plus text or plus code. So whenever you're writing some text, you can click on the plus text button, you can write it, or you can click on the plus code button to write the code. So whenever you are because basically you will write some churn of code here. So please click on the plus code button and keep on typing it. And whenever you are going to run it, you can see in the left hand button, see the screen, there is a run cell option is there. You will click on the run cell and it will show you the output. Okay. So let's explore the very simple first code. This is one of the imperative programming paradigm we all are aware of. Okay, we are defining at function. Okay, and then what we have done, we have calculated the basically summation of the 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we got the output 10. Okay, so I am not saying to write this particular code, because this is just I'm giving you the idea. Okay, just to giving you the overview. So this is how we can call it as the imperative as well as the interpreted language as well. Okay, so here what we have done, we have basically in the functional body sequence, we have evaluated the fancy underscore func function. Okay, and we have calculated the summation of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we got the output 10. So this is the mode of the coding we are quite accustomed with whenever we started to explore in the programming domain. Now we will see the symbolic programming. Okay, so what I mean, like I was mentioning, if you see the text of the symbolic programming introduction, what I mentioned, the Theano or TensorFlow. Okay, these are all the symbolic pattern, but TensorFlow was the essence of the imperative extensions, which right from the TensorFlow 2.0. Okay, but initial level it was the symbolic programming, and it is the perfect setup for to build up certain products and all. Okay, so in symbolic programming, we follow certain steps to develop certain coding portions. So first of all, the first step is what type of operations we require to explore. Okay, what type of operations we require to explore. Second one is the compile the operations into an executable program. Okay, and the third one is about providing the required inputs, okay, and call the compiled program for the execution. So I repeat, the first one is about the operations to be executed. The second one is about the compiling the operations into executable program. And the third one is about providing the required inputs and calling the compiled program for execution. So these three are the basic steps. Okay. Now we will see how we are following those steps while converting the same imperative language program into the symbolic program. Okay. So let's see. So this is first of all, we are defining the problem given to us. Okay. So basic definitions of the add function. Okay, def add ab, we are returning a plus b. Okay, then we are defining the fancy function. Okay, so we have following steps a b c d e, adding a plus b, we are getting e, adding c d, we are getting f, adding e and f, we are getting g, and we are returning g. Okay. Then in the next step, once we have defined the basic programming structure, we are going to the defining the compiler. Okay. So this is the compiler step, defining the compiler. Okay. And then at the final stage, what we have done, def add ab, we are getting the outcome a plus b. Okay, and at the final stage, what you see after defining the after writing up to return g, we are simply calling the function fancy func. Okay, print fancy func 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are getting the output 10. Okay, so if you follow the structure like the first structure which I have shown you for the imperative programming, and now what you are getting for this symbolic programming. So the three steps are quite prominent in the symbolic programming. Okay, so basically define the operations to be executed, compile the operations into executable program, and providing the required input and the call the compile program for execution. So that is the basic features. Okay, that is the basic beauty of the symbolic programming, and which gives you lot of scope to optimize your code. Okay. So if you see the basic difference between the imperative or interpreted programming and symbolic programming. Okay, Basically, interactive programming quite easy. Okay, and it is quite easy because we first of all we start with exploring with that. We start with C, which is a procedure oriented languages, or otherwise we start with C++. Okay, which we consider as object oriented programming. And nowadays people are also starting with Java, which is object oriented programming. In Python, R, we're dealing with objects. So we all are, whether we are going with the procedure oriented or object oriented, we all are accustomed with this type of imperative type of coding. Okay, and that's the reason once you are familiar with from your childhood, or it is quite easy for you to adapt with. That's the reason it's quite easy for us as well. And if you see that we can deploy, the majority of the codings are quite straightforward, easy to write. Okay, and quite the results are quite easier to obtain. Okay, Python has inbuilt debugging tools. And if you see the symbolic programming, like I was mentioning, the symbolic programming is quite efficient and easier to port. Okay, and whenever, for example, optimizations of the codes and all those steps are quite easier. Okay, and it is also the platform independent. Another important feature is the platform independent. Okay, so it gives the ability to port the program into a format independent of Python. So this allows the program to be run in a non-Pythonic environment as well. Okay, so that means you don't have to tackle the performance related issue on the basis of the Python interpreter. So that type of facility actually it's onboarded through this type of environment, what we are writing as a symbolic programming. Okay, so before going to hybrid programming, it was the basic introduction I should give to you with a very simple novice kind of example, that those who are new to this type of scenarios, they can also understand. Okay, because this is required a very basic level of coding sense to get the difference between imperative programming language as with the symbolic. Okay, now we will come to see hybrid programming. Okay, the facilities nowadays by TensorFlow is enjoying. Okay, which has the hybriding mode, because it was written in symbolic programming way, but it has the essence of imperative coding right from the TensorFlow 2.0. Now the current version of the TensorFlow, if I am not wrong, it is 2.5. So 2.0, right from the 2.0 version, it is getting that type of facilities. Okay, so basically we'll see that historically, like I have mentioned here, that when we come to hybrid programming, okay, so historically most of the deep learning frameworks, either they are going with the imperative mode of approach, or they are going with the symbolic mode of approach. Okay, so for example, we can talk about Theano, TensorFlow, Keras. Okay, these are the good models to explore out with. And whether the PyTorch or ChainArc, these are the good platform of the imperative approach, like I mentioned earlier also. So, and also I have mentioned, for example, if you see the Keras, if you see the later version of the Keras, already TensorFlow 2.2 has the imperative essence I already highlighted. And also the Keras, their updated version, if you see the current version of the Keras also, has the good sense of the imperative coding, apart from the symbolic programming which it started with. So in a nutshell, you can see these all are the very good example to explore with the hybrid programming paradigm. Okay, so basically, whenever you will see that whenever we will explore the module like MXNet, so we will talk about the platforms like Gluon. Okay, so Gluon, in case of the Gluon also, it is enjoying both the programming paradigm. It is also the imperative as well as your symbolic. Okay, so this is leading to your basically the pure this is basically the hybrid programming platform rather than going with the pure imperative or pure symbolic. So first of all, our target will to build the hybrid block or hybrid sequential class. Okay, and by default either of them has the same way. I mean, you know that the block can have this certain, they can have contain the entire model or certain portion of the code. So under the hybrid block or hybrid sequential class, we'll be able to see the facilities of the hybridizing facilities of the symbolic programming or the or for example your imperative programming. Okay, so let us start with the hybridizing the sequential class. So basically the easiest way to get a feel or how hybridizing the works, okay, in deep neural networks with the multiple layers, that we will gradually see. Basically what happens that whenever we are running the Python interpreters, what does it do actually? It execute the codes for all the layers in the depending to generate instruction which actually forwarded to CPU or a GPU, whatever the platform we are exploring for our coding purpose. So so for a single fast computing device, does not cause any major issues. So if we have the, for example, if we have the advanced 8 GPU servers such as Amazon Web Service, AWS, P3DN dot to a 24x large instance, where the Python will struggle to keep busy all the GPUs. So that is one of the problems, that if you go with the high performance platforms, because Python has this single threading property. So Python will not be able to keep busy with all those GPUs if you are going with the 8 GPU servers, for example, because it is the bottleneck of the single threaded property of Python. So let us see that with the how we can replace the sequential with hybrid sequential, and we can get the benefit of the hybrid programming structure. Okay, so we are starting with a very simple MLP. MLP means multi-layer perceptron. Okay, so you all know perceptron. What is perceptron? Basically, multi-layer perceptron. What happens in perceptron? We talk about the single layer. In multi-layer perceptron, there should be at least one input layer. One input layer, at least one hidden layer, and one output layer. Okay, so this is how the multi-layer perceptron is being formed, and we tackle with the nonlinear activation function. In hidden layer, it is attached with the nonlinear activation function. For example, you can talk about ReLU as a nonlinear activation function, because it is performance-wise scalable. This performance-wise scalability is added with the ReLU actually. Okay, because you see what happens that if you see that curve of the sigmoid function or tan hyperbolic, if you observe the curve pattern, it is saturated somewhere. Okay, it takes a S-like shape. If you see the curve of the tan hyperbolic or sigmoid, it is taking the S-like shape. Although tan hyperbolic is better than sigmoid function. In 1989, Linnet paper actually, Ian LeCun discussed about the sigmoid function, but then it was found that tan hyperbolic is also better than sigmoid, because in case of the tan hyperbolic, you are getting some value for the negativity point of view as well, because the range is of the tan hyperbolic from -1 to +1. Okay, for the negative swing, you are getting some wave pattern. But in case of the sigmoid, what is happening? The range is from 0 to 1. So for the negative value, you are not getting any kind of swing of the waveform. So it is forming 0. Okay, but what happened that tan hyperbolic or sigmoid function, both are suffering from the vanishing gradient problem. Okay, they both have the vanishing gradient problem, because as I am saying, that's the reason they are not the performance wise scalable. So once the deep learning era came up, people, scientists from this Harvard or MIT, they all are the quite fascinating about the superhuman activity. So what happens that in case of whenever you are mimicking the human activity, what is the difference with the mimicking human activity and superhuman activity? If you go by that philosophy, that if you are working for 24 hours, I'm sorry, if you are working, if you day and night, it is not possible to work you for the 24 hours continuously. Okay, after certain working for 12 hours, 16 hours, your performance will be saturated. Okay, for it is not possible for a human being to work 24/7. You require some rest, so your performance saturates. So our human performance curve is exactly matching with this type of S type of curve shape of the sigmoid or tan hyperbolic. After certain level, the performance gets saturated. But what about if we have the curve like ramp-like function? For example, ReLU. Okay, rectifier linear unit. If you see the curve of the ReLU, it is continuous scalable. Continuous scalable. So it actually gives you the philosophy of the superhuman activity, that all the time you are on the job, you are executing your full potential to get the optimum outcome. So that's the reason the deep learning has that type of capability to get the accuracy nearby 100%, not only nearby 100%, even 100%. If you have that much of the that scalability of the data, because having data set in order of 10 to the power 5 is not a matter of joke. And nowadays people are following a lot of pretend help, taking help of the pretend models. They are transfer learning, but still getting adequate data set is a challenge in deep learning. So anyway, so coming back to our discussion, that we are going to talk about a very simple example with a multi-layer perceptron. Okay, so if I request all the participant to kindly now start writing the code, because we will see the benefit of the hybridizing the sequential class. Okay, so please click on the plus code button, which will give you, in this way you can see the pop-up whether you can add code cell or add text cell. So please click on the add code cell and just start exploring it. So first of all, you're required to install mxnet. Okay, and then so what will you do, you will simply type pip install mxnet. Okay, then you do the importing of the mxnet module. Okay, followed by pip install d2l. This is d2l. Okay, and importing d2l. D2l makes this, it makes the platform the I mean it makes the platform quite robust by avoiding the all the current if my system is not updated, it gives you the robust outcome, making it independent of the whether certain softwares are installed or not, related to mxnet oriented. Okay, so that's the reason it is better to install d2l and import it, d2l module, and then you type from mxnet import np comma npx, np for the numpy and npx. It will in under the numpy environment, npx makes it the platform independent. Okay, you don't require to depend on the requirement of the certain updated mode of softwares or downloading something. It gives you the optimum outcome under the np module. Okay, or sorry, mp library. And then you can from mxnet.gluon, that is very very important library because it takes the hybridization facilities, import nn. Okay, and then just from d2l import mxnet as d2l, just write this basic setup. Then we will start exploring on the gradually one by one line of code. Okay, we will type on these sequential layers. So while typing the pip install, kindly do not forget to write the exclamatory sign. Okay, that is there, that is quite essential. So once you are done with up to setup, npx.setup, okay, then you gradually start typing. I think some comment box, some comment is there, I guess. Let me check. Chat. Okay, so it is not related to my session. Okay, so basically npx.setup underscore np, then factory for networks, you will start writing it, def get underscore net. Okay, net equals to nn dot hybrid sequential. Okay, then what you will do, you will keep on adding one by one layer. After this adding the nn dot hybrid sequential function, you just keep on adding the one by one layer. Okay, net dot add nn dot dense layer. Okay, 256 where the activation function is ReLU, activation equals to ReLU. Okay, so then comma nn dot dense. Okay, where your activation is ReLU, it is the same, comma dense 2. Then net dot initialize, it is the common step for this type of activity. You will after writing all the layers, you will go to the initialization and then return net. Then you type capital X equals to np.random.normal. Okay, so those who are aware about the NumPy arrays and tackling with the NumPy arrays, so basically this is very common form of coding. So basically it will give you the where you have to define the size. So 1 by 512, then the 1 comma 512 size. After defining the size, net equals to get underscore net, and just to print the netx. So just I'm showing you the output you are going to get. Those who are typing the code, if you have any difficulty in writing the code, you can write in the comment box section. Okay, so this is now 10:29. So I will wait up to 10:34, 5 minutes for writing all of you to complete this code. Then I will go to the next part of the coding. So first of all, it will show you the collecting of the ImageNet. Okay, downloading all the versions. Okay, all the requirements. Okay, so in this way, it will keep on printing. Okay. And at the end, after you will be able to see the successfully installed D12, and you will be able to see the array, okay, which we have done it by calling netx function. Okay, then doing that, we will go for the net.hybridize function and all those things. We will do that hybridize function part after that. Okay, so I am just so keep on writing. Okay, by 10:34 we'll go to the next portion. Okay, I'm just giving you 4 minutes of time. I mean, actually it was 5 minutes, now 4 minutes remaining. Let me check if any text has arrived. Okay, so once while writing the code, if you face any difficulty, let me know. And this is the run cell button in the left hand side. Okay, you can click on it and you can run the code. But remember that you should follow the indentation which I have given in this coding section. For example, after defining any function def get net, you can see there has been some sort of space has been given, and then we have started writing net. Okay, up to return net, up to closing the function. Okay, because whether you are writing loop or writing function in Python or Pythonic platform, any Pythonic platform, indentation is not a fashion. It is mandatory. If you don't follow the indentation, it will give you some error. So at least one character space is required, minimum. Okay, you can follow multiple. In our other languages, in those who are quite accustomed with the coding, they follow the indentation just to make the look code beautiful. Okay, or to enhance the readability or visibility of the code. But here you see indentation is not a fashion in Python or Python related platform. It is important. If you don't give, you may face error. In Google Colabs, what happens that whether you are starting writing the code certain loops or writing certain function, what happens that it will by default it will in the next line when you go, by default it will give one space, one character space. That type of facility you will get in Google Colab. But if you are using some downloaded software, you are required to give that. Okay, there you will not get that type of facility. Okay, so always remember that in Python or Pythonic related platform, you should follow the indentation. It is mandatory. It is not a fashion like any other code language where you used to explore the indentation just to enhance the readability of the code. Okay, so those are the very basic things. We always have to keep it in your mind, because as we always say, basics are very important. Okay, so whether you are doing deep learning, machine learning, doesn't matter. We can go to high level in next 10 years, and next 14, 15 years, we are going to explore with quantum machine learning, because from 2035, what will happen that whatever the physical processes we have, that will not be able to tackle all those exponential growth of data. As I was mentioning, that nowadays the number of the stars in the universe is equal to number of the bits in the digital world, and we have the exponential rate growth. So thanks to the blessings of this blessings of NVIDIA, that's why we are enjoying the facilities of GPU, or the thanks to Google, we are enjoying the facilities of TPU, tensor processing unit. That we are now blessed with that type of platforms, elegant platforms, to process that type of the high chunk of data. But you see, as I am mentioning, that these all those processors will saturate by 2035, as per the experts. So we require quantum platform. So someday you will move to that type of platform. Nowadays, a lot of people, those who are exploring quantum machine learning, they are writing codes there. But you remember that basics are going to remain same. Even you are doing quantum machine learning, they are also required to learn linear algebra. These basics coding aspects, basic essence of coding should be there within you to avoid this type of indentation error, in which are very common. I have seen a lot of people make common mistakes in Pythonic platforms, Python or Python related platforms. Okay, so basics are always important. So I would request participants, those are experts, they already know it, but those who are new, I would request kindly follow that type of elegant way of coding. Okay, so I think that already it is 10:34. So let me check this comment box if anything has not arrived there. So I will consider that all of you have incorporated it successfully. Could not find a version not matching. Are you using Google Colab? If you are using Google Colab, if you follow it, it would not have the problem. Please write in Google Colab. Please type the code in Google Colab. Write P after, once you complete writing pip install mxnet, import mxnet, then you type pip install d2l and import d2l. Please follow this. Exactly type whatever I have written there. Run it. It will be, your code will be absolutely okay. Okay. In Google Colab, follow exact the way I have written the code. It is D2L. Okay, it is D2L, small l. After 2, it is small l, not 1. Okay, so those who are writing, it is D2L. Thank you, Orpita Mujumdar, madam. Ankita, Ankur Vishwas, and I hope that now it is Orpita Mujumdar, madam, is now quite clear with it. Okay. Yes, sir, it is running fine. Thank you very much. Okay, it will be better. Okay. Acha. Is there any test? Okay, no problem. D2L. Please 1 minute more. Okay, sir, I am waiting. No problem. No problem. So it is 10:36. We will wait up to 10:37. Then we'll move again. Okay. So it will, because you see we are doing it remotely, I require your kind cooperation. So for example, if you have any difficulty, or if you want me to wait some time, please write in the chat box. Okay. And if you are executing it properly, just kindly one or two participants can volunteer to write it there. So it will be easier for me to see that, well, it is running and all. Module not find Python. Please, madam, please open your Google Colab and please write pip install mxnet, import mxnet. Then you please type pip install d2l. It is l. Okay. Then import 2l. And do not forget to write this last line, from d2l import mxnet as d2l. It will be there. Sir, can you paste? Please paste the code. It will speed up then. So you want me to paste it in? Okay. Okay. So I have pasted the code there in comment box. I hope now it should be okay. Most welcome, madam. So should I go ahead, or let me wait 1 more minute? Okay, it's 10:38. I will wait up to 10:39. Then, okay, we'll go to next portion. Because we are simply utilizing the MLP platform with hybridizations, with hybrid sequential function. We are doing the hybrid programming here. We're utilizing the hybrid platforms where both type of essence is there, imperative coding as well as your symbolic coding, symbolic programming. We are retaining both the essence there. Okay. And we are doing it, we are implementing multi-layer perceptron, which is a very basic thing to explore in deep learning. Because in deep learning, we deal with multi-layer perceptron. So that's the reason we are exploring it on the MLP multi-layer perceptron. Okay. And due to that, you require to go by factory for networks. Okay. That's it. Okay, sir. Thanks. Okay. So I'm just going the next portion. I hope now this portion is adapted by all of you. So I'm just going to next part. Okay. Message has arrived. Got it, sir. How to run? Sir, kindly look at this portion in the left side, run cell option. Click on the run cell button, okay, and run it. Okay, very good. It already ran. Your code has run. Or you can follow shift enter also, like madam has written there. You can also follow that. So basically now what you have to do, that by calling the hybridized function, you will be able to optimize the code, compile and optimize the code. Okay. So once you are writing it, and you are writing netx, after doing the net.hybridized function, calling the net.hybridized function, you will get the following array output. Okay. So basically, once you have done that, so let me so what will happen, that if you see the earlier result, and if you match with that result, both the cases are same. Okay. Here you have called the net.hybridized function. Okay. After calling the hybridized function, net of x you are printing, you are getting the same array which you have got the earlier cases. Okay. So we will see that what type of benefit then you are getting by the hybridization. Okay. Is hybridization is being able to give some acceleration? Okay. That thing we will follow up now. Okay. So once you are done with that part, let me know. Please do implement this part. Okay. Net hybridize, after doing that, netx. Okay. And run it. So once you run it, you will be able to see the output, which is matching the output with the earlier also. So are we able to do the optimization, or any kind of acceleration is being added by the hybridization? That thing we will see now. So first of all, you just execute that, then we will see what type of acceleration it is adding. Okay. Okay, done. So I believe that these 2 lines of small chunk of code, all of you have implemented. Okay. So I'm going to the acceleration by hybridization part. Okay. So now we will demonstrate, okay, that how through the hybridization, we are being able to accelerate the code. Okay, so before going to that and before measuring the performances, I have added few note on the code because these are the very common question which may arise when you are writing the code, that you will be able to see. One is the self keyword in Python. What is the functionality of the self keyword, which you will which you will see that definitely while defining the class benchmark. Here you see one argument, one keyword we have used, that is self in the form of argument under the def initialization function. So basically, self is a keyword which defines the instances of a class in Python. Okay, so by using that, what you can do, you can easily access all the instances defined within a class, including methods and attributes. So due to that, in most of the cases, you will be able to see that we are using this type of self keyword very commonly as an argument while defining a class, such that it can access all the instances. Okay, all the instances, including methods and attributes of a class. Okay, that thing we will see. And another thing which you will be able to see, you can see that already you can see that whatever the portion of the code is visible, that when writing the def exit with the self and args arguments. Okay, so asterisk arguments, args one is given there. What does it actually imply? So basically, it is the one of the it is one of the arguments which is given under the function of the def exit function. It basically defines you the variable number of the arguments, but these are the known keywords. Okay, in Python, you know, there is a list of keywords. Okay, it is non keywords. That's the reason it is single asterisk args. It is symbolizing the variable length argument list. Okay, variable length argument list of non keywords. But if in some cases you may observe this similar type of arguments given while writing the function under the class, that is double asterisk kwargs. It is only single asterisk args, that is double asterisk kwargs. So that is also a variable length argument list. That is also assigning variable length argument list, but with keywords. This is non keywords. This is the list of non keywords. And whenever you are writing with double asterisk kwargs argument under this type of class definition, that is the keywords with variable length argument list. So these are the few clarifications I am giving, because these are the common questions which comes in mind. Okay, now I am just scrolling up to the code portion. Okay, so it will be easier for you to write up. So first of all, in this section, what will you do? You will execute this code, but this will not show any kind of output because you are not printing any output. Basically, first of all, class benchmark you are assigning, where basically self description is given there. Then what you are doing, you are putting some self timer in the next class section. Okay, so d2l.timer function will done the job. Okay, and then at the final stage, okay, of this code chunk, you are defining def exit self args. Okay, where you will just simply put the setup for the how the way you will want to print the output. So it will be like self description self timer dot stop, and 0.4f means it will take 4 decimal after the point. Okay, it will take 4 decimal second. This is the basic setup when you want to print it up. Okay, now once you are done it, we will follow two things. One, we will execute the code without hybridization, and another one is with hybridization, and then we will measure the timing. Okay, that with hybridization and without hybridization, are we able to optimize that timing? Okay, because we have seen that with hybridization and without hybridization, we are getting same type of array. So the common question arising, that are we able to optimize the code with hybridization technique, whatever we are following here, by keeping the imperative and symbolic essence both? Are we able to optimize it or not? So once you write this benchmark part, class definition of the benchmark, okay, once you complete that part up to print, then you just run it. That means your code is okay, fine. If this is not showing any type of error, that means your code is okay. Okay, then in the next section, we will start writing this code. Okay, one without hybridization and one with hybridization. Okay. So once you are done with that part, let me know. It is 10:49. I will wait up to 10:53. Okay. After waiting 4 minutes, I believe that 4 minutes is good enough to write this part of code. And then we'll move to the next part. Okay. So then we will see that with hybridization and without hybridization, we'll make a tally and we'll see the measure the time that by adding the hybridization, are we able to get the optimization result or not, optimized result or not. So that type of thing we will explore. Okay. And meanwhile, for any difficulty, kindly ping me. Most welcome. Most welcome. So I believe that participant, once the interaction comes from the participant, it helps me to understand that the things are going okay. So it will be better if you sometime ping and say, okay, all things are fine, or if you have some difficulty, query, please ask me. Because you see, the remotely doing lab is not that much easy. Because I can't see that whether you are being able to explore it or not, whether you are facing some difficulty. So that's the reason both end communication is very important there. And I am getting good support from my all the respected participants. Thank you. Most welcome. Thank you. So what I'll do now, it's 10:53. So I am moving the next part. Okay. After explaining that, I will share that in chat box also. Okay. So I believe that this part is done by all. Okay. So it's time to move the next portion. Okay. Now in the earlier part, we have set a timer. Basically, if you see if you try to understand in a very novice language, not going much technical detail, so you can say that we have fixed a timer, because you have to measure certain things, certain parameter to give it a idea about that whether by doing the hybridization we are getting some optimum result or not, or we are being able to optimize it or not. So it is easy way to execute is from our common sense. If we ask ourselves, that is to let's check the timing. Okay, because time is precious, we always say. So it is common intuition from our mind that let's check the timing, that both of them are giving the same result, whether they are giving are we being able to improve the timing or not. So that type of thing we want to explore now. So that platform we have set up in earlier portion. Now here you see we are getting the getting benefit of that. Basically, you see we have defined the benchmark without hybridization, okay, by running the loop npx.wait for all, and another thing with hybridization, and calling it with npx.wait all for execution all the iterations. Wait all means execution for all the iterations. And then if you see that without hybridization, the time is taken 0.7260 second, and with hybridization, it is taking the time after you run the code 0.1893. So you can see that with hybridization, it is taking, 4 times higher than the without hybridization. Okay, so you will see some sort of the optimized outcome, obviously. So that type of benefit we can see once we are going with the hybridization approach by keeping the imperative as well as the symbolic programming essence, we can get that type of optimized performance, that type of benefited outcome is now possible to achieve. Okay, so I am sharing the code in your comment box. So kindly incorporate it. And once you are done, just let me know it. Yeah? Thank you. Okay, so I have sent you the code in comment box. So kindly incorporate it. And once you are done, just let me know it. Okay, great. So let me wait 1 minute for all the participants to execute it. And then we will proceed towards the next part of the serialization. Okay, Anubhav Roy done. Shivopriya done. Any problem from anyone? Okay. Rajrupa Mitia done. Okay, done. I think there should not be any problem, I guess. It is. Just make sure that you are following the indentation properly. One mistake which may arise, that is indentation related, that you are giving proper spacing. Those who are accustomed with Pythonic platform, they know the importance of indentation in Python. As I mentioned, that it is not for fashion, it is mandatory in Python. So some in other languages we keep indentation in sometimes to enhance readability of the code. So it looks good when you put indentation, but in Python it is not like that, it is mandatory. So please follow the way we have executed here. Okay, so great. So most of the participants has already response. So I am moving forward to next section. So I believe now it is quite clear to all of you that without hybridization and with hybridization, how we are creating impact. Okay, so let's move ahead with the next section, next portion of our discussion. And thank you all the participants for kindly cooperating me And thank you very much. So basically in the serialization section, we will see the benefits of the compiling model. Okay, which we can actually serialize. Okay, and its parameter to the disk. So basically, what would happen if we do that? So basically, it will allow to store a model in a manner which is quite independent of the front-end language. Okay, like I was talking about the benefit of the symbolic programming, that it makes the platform independent. In front end, it can be Python, any other Pythonic platform, it can be Java, C Sharp, any type of language may be there in front end. But can we make it front end independent? Because in Python, for example, it's a single threading language. Now, if we want to engage, if we are executing with the large amount of the data, and you are tackling with the multiple GPU platforms, so for a single thread programming language, it is not possible to engage all the GPUs. I repeat that for a single thread programming language, it is not possible to engage all the GPUs. So that's the reason we are putting the benefit of the hybridized model. Okay, and what we are doing, we are taking the benefit of the serialization as well. Okay, just to make it platform independent. Okay, front end language independent. Here your front end language is Python. Okay, we are exploring with the Pythonic language, Pythonic platforms. Okay, so either Python or Pythonic platform, we are going with that. Okay, in Google Colab. So we want to make it independent about the interpreter. Okay, front end interpreter. Sorry, interpreter of the front end language. Okay, so in the same thing we will follow in the serialization portion. We will keep on installing MXNet. Okay, installing D2L. Okay, after doing that, npx dot setup we will do, and then what we will do, we will just deploy the following code: net.export. Okay, and then we will decompose my MLP. So this type of output you will be able to see. Okay, our target will be to decompose MLP, and if you decompose it, you can see these two type of output will arise. I'm just showing you the output, then you will run the code. You see, one is the my MLP. It's a large binary parameter file has arrived, .params extension. That means parameter file. It's a large binary parameter file. And another one is your basically the JSON file. Okay, so JSON description of the programming, which is required for the model execution purpose. So these two decomposition has been done. Okay, so these files, what are the benefits of these files? These files can be read by other front-end programming languages. So for example, it can be supported with Python or MXNet, obviously, and with the any front-end language is supported by Python and MXNet. For example, the C++, R, Scala, Perl, they all will be able to read these two files. So why did we decompose it? Such that apart from this type of Pythonic platforms, the supported Pythonic platforms, for example, the other programming language which can support this type of platform, C++, R, Scala, Perl, they all can read these two files. One is the large binary file, that is a parameter file, and the other one is your JSON file. Okay, so it can be supported with that. And what we will do, then we will see the model description by writing this particular code on the JSON file. Okay, head my MLP symbol.json, you will be able to see the model description. So first of all, our task will be to decompose the code. To decompose the overall model. Okay, so we will do the decomposition of the MLP model in order to make it platform independent. To be precise, front-end language independent. So kindly incorporate that part. Okay. Once you run it, you will be able to see at the end two files. One binary file, large binary file, that is the parameter file. Another one is your basically uh, your JSON file. Okay. So those two files, it is platform independent, irrespective of the your whatever the front end language you are using, apart from MXNet module based Pythonic platform or Python, it will be able to supported by R, Scala, Perl, all those languages, C++. They can support, they can execute it, or they can read it. So once you are done, just you let me know in the comment box section. It is now 11:05. By 11:08, we will move to the next portion. Okay. Just a second. Let me share the screen. Sorry. So I have shared the code in your comment box. Kindly have a look. Great. Great. Okay, so gradually all our respected participants are nodding their head positively that they have done it. Okay, thank you for your kind feedback, sir. So we will wait for another 1 minute and then we will move to the next portion. Thank you all the respected participants for your kind feedback or input. So it is helping us to make the session going ahead with quite smoother way. So thank you very much to all. So we will wait 1 more minute and we will proceed to the next part. Okay, so it's now 11:08, so we are moving to next part. So now we have seen that you got two types of parameters. One is with the JSON file, another one is your uh, basically your large binary file. Okay, which is your parameter file basically. So now this file can be supported by, like I have mentioned, if you see the screen, okay, C++, R, Scala, everybody can now it is readable by this type of languages. So gradually we are going with the making the front end language independency. Now what we will do, we can see that the model description, for example, how the JSON file looks like. Okay, so you just simply read run this code. Okay, so I have written in the comment box. So you just simply run this code. You will be able to see that structure. It looks like the JSON file structure. It is there. Okay. Okay, great. So now we will see that, for example, the how can we gradually check the performances of the hybrid net, for example. So in this case, one of the function which we are going to utilize here. So for example, under the function argument, like I was mentioning, that you see with the double asterisk and KW args. So this is basically signifies you, it's a variable length argument list. It is signifying variable length argument list with keywords. Okay. So in Python, as I mentioned, that there is a list when people start learning Python, we see there are a lot of list of keywords are there. So if the arguments is variable list keywords, then it is double asterisk KWARGS we use. This type of naming we do in case of defining a class. Okay. And single asterisk ARGS means that is variable length, which we have seen earlier. That is a variable length argument, but without keywords. So that is the difference between double asterisk KWARGS with single asterisk ARGS. Okay, so that type of note I have given there, note on code, which you may face difficulty in terms of understanding, or you may ask for explanation. So that type of things I have explained there. Now you see, basically here we are exploring the hybrid blocking. Okay, so we have seen the benefit of the hybridization, and how the optimum coding we are doing. We have seen the serialization. We are while decomposing the front end coding. Okay, front end. To make the chunk of model independent of the front end language. Okay, we have decomposed it in a JSON file and the large binary file, parameter file. Now we are dealing with the hybrid blocks. Okay, so basically in a block of model, it can contain the whole model, it can contain the some portion of the model. So it depends upon your program description. So here basically we are exploring the hybridizations. Okay, and at the end we will be able to see, for example, after doing the hybridization, okay, we'll explore the hybrid net and their initialization platforms. Okay, so basically in the above code, what we have implemented, just let me explain it a little bit, then I am just copying pasting the code in your comment box section such that you can execute it quite clearly, easily. So basically, if you see that this network has the 4 hidden unit, okay, and 2 outputs. Okay, and this hybrid forward function which we are using, it takes an additional argument f. This is needed. Why it is required, the additional argument f? Because you see, depending on whether the code is hybridized or not, okay, it will use this slightly different library. Okay, if it is hybridized, it will use the library NDRA, and if it's not the hybridized, then it will use some other thing. So by executing the class performances with very similar languages, MXNet automatically determines the arguments, okay, to understand what is going on, and we print the arguments as a part of the function invocation. So basically, executing it, after doing that, it will satisfy all the required parameters, okay, once you installing them and all. Then in the next section, just I am giving you a brief overview, then I'm going back to the earlier code. So here, if you see, for example, this part, we are calling that hybridnet function here, okay, and we are printing the output, okay, and you will be able to see that while printing netx and here net.hybridized netx, we are getting the same type of array outcome, okay, it is giving you the same type of array outcome. So we can see that whether using the hybridized function or not, okay, after decomposing it and serialization, you are being able to see the same type of outcome. If you see, for example, in once the hybridized part, we will use ND array. If it is not the hybridized part, we can give it the module F. So that is the main difference. You need to understand that the difference in the module while executing and printing the result of netx. If it is hybridized array, we will go with the ND array. And if it is not, okay, we will use the symbol module for F. That's the reason we have used there one argument F. So that's it. So this is the small part I would request to execute it after the serialization step. Okay. So this F part, now it is quite understandable that it is required to check whether your system is hybridized or not. Okay, this F part is testing whether your system is hybridized or not. If it is hybridized, you will go with ND array. If it is not, you will go with symbol. Okay, in both the cases, you are getting the same type of outcome. But if you are following the hybridized model, then you are optimizing the code. You are running the code almost 1/4 time than the non-hybridized model. So that is the basic difference between going with the hybridization approach and non-hybridization approach. And there is another angle which we discussed, that our target will be to make it front-end independent, okay, such that it can be readable with all the Python supportive languages, C++, R, Perl, anyone can read it. So the JSON file, we have explored the JSON file, we have explored the parameter file, we have seen the structure. Okay, now I am sharing it in the comment box section. Kindly have a look. Okay, so it's now 11:17. Please execute that part of the code. Okay, we will start the next portion of execution of the code because I've explained all part. We'll start the next portion of execution by 11:19. Okay, so once you are done, kindly let me know. Always remember that two explanation I have made. One is the KWARGS double asterisk that I told you, that is keyworded variable length argument list. Okay, and another thing is we have used extra argument, that is capital F, to test that whether our code is hybridized or not. Okay, because in case of hybridized, we will use ND array. If it is not, then we will go by this symbolic approach. Okay, so or we will go by the symbol for processing. Okay, so these are the differences. Otherwise, output will be same. The difference is the runtime or the type of optimization you have made. Okay, already the inputs are coming. Please keep on posting once you are done. After getting few responses, I will move to the next part. So basically what I am doing, it's already 11:19, so I'm moving to next part. I believe that that part is quite clear to you. Now I am pasting the next cell to the comment box. Okay. So by running these two subsequent cell, this one, okay, netx, by defining net equals to hybrid net, another one is a net dot hybridized function, you will be able to see in both the cases, okay, you are getting the same type of output. Okay. So already people have executed it. I am waiting for 10 more seconds and we'll paste the next section of the code in your comment box. You just run it. So remember, if it is hybridized, then we will go by n-dimensional array. If it is not, we will go by symbol. Okay. In both the cases, we are going to get the same type of output. Net dot hybridized function, we will get the same type of output, and simply running netx, we will get the same type of output. Okay. The array, if you observe the array, it will be same. The component of the array 0.00041,907, comma 0.00116,455. Okay. I'm pasting the next portion of the code. I believe this part is done already. Okay. So you have observed the array outcome. Now you do the last part of this particular script notebook. Just simply run netx. And you will see the amazing outcome. It is also giving you the same type of result. Okay. So basically what is happening that here we are not using any type of the hybrid forward, which is omitted here. Okay. After, if you see the execution of the hybridization to the execution of the netx, that does not involve Python interpreter any longer. This means any spurious Python code you are giving, that is omitted. Okay. Because your code is now optimized, it is quite streamlined, and it has the C++ at the back end. Okay. So whatever the front end code you are giving, it is irrespective of your front end code, MXNet has the C++ at the back end, which is giving you the optimized support. Okay. And And obviously the other factors, like I was mentioning, one is your what is your front end and what is your back end code. Can you make the code your front end language independent? That is one important thing. That if you can make it front end language independent, that means you don't require Python interpreter anymore. Rather, your backend program will tackle it. Okay, like C++, having C++, for example, PyTorch as the backend C++. So it makes the code execution much more faster. And once you go by the hybridized model, symbolic programming model, that means it doesn't matter that what is your front end language. Your front end language will be user friendly. Python is user friendly. Pythonic is user friendly. The motto is keep something as front end language that is user friendly. That will look like having an imperative shape. In front end, you are doing imperative type of coding. Okay. Whenever you are doing it for the academic research purpose, you are deploying it in academic aspects. Okay. It is people are quite easygoer with the imperative coding and friendly architecture. So Python has that. But in backend, when you have the C++ type of the backup, it makes your system execute faster. And with the hybridized model, you are making the system front-end independent. So there is no role for the Python interpreter actually there. And rather, Python is a single-threaded language where it has the limitations, but you will be able to keep the other GPUs as engaged as well. Because like I am telling that if you are going with a high performance machine where you have the multiple number of GPUs, then it becomes very difficult for the single threaded programming language to make the optimum benefit of all those GPU facilities. So hybridized approach can give you that type of the benefit as well. So we have seen the hybridization, we have seen the serialization, okay, and how can we take it forward with the help of the front end back end combinations, okay. And in a summary, if you see, I have added one summary part for your easier understanding purpose, such that whatever you have learned, you can summarize it here. So imperative programming makes it easy to design new models, like I was mentioning, since it is possible to write code with control flow, like we use if-else statement, we go with for loop, we go with functions, conventional way of defining functions, and ability to use a large amount of Python software ecosystem. Okay, but symbolic programming requires we need to specify the program and compile it before executing, specifying the programming structure, then you define the compiler, then you execute it with certain sort of input. That is a structure we saw in case of the symbolic programming definition, okay, and it will give you the better performances. Now MXNet is able to combine the advantage of the both. That's the reason we are going with the MXNet module here. And models constructed by the advantages of the hybrid sequential and hybrid block classes are able to convert the imperative programs into symbolic program by calling the hybridized function. Okay, I believe that this portion, whatever we have learned today at the first session, is now quite clear to all of you, that why do we go for the hybridization, benefit of serialization, and how we can take the benefit of the interpreted and symbolic programming both while executing the multi-layer perceptron. We have explored one example in deep learning session 1 with executing the multi-layer perceptron by making with the hybridized approach, and we see the benefit of the optimization. Okay, so I believe it is quite clear to all of you. If any doubt or any query from the participant, let me know. I guess there is a 15 minutes break. We'll come with the second session soon. We'll get the second session soon after the 15 minutes break. So if any doubt, kindly let me know. Otherwise, we will take the 15 minutes break and start the second session. Or any feedback or any suggestion from your end, that would be highly appreciated. You can write it in your comment box section as well. Because it's all, at the end of that, it's all about peer-to-peer learning.
Participants are requested to write in the chat box if you have any query, or else you can directly talk to the speaker. You have been given the permission to talk to the speaker.
Acha, nice experience. Okay, okay. Thank you so much for your kind feedback. Thank you so much.
Yes, I think our speaker has already addressed all the queries that is written in the chat box.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice explanation. Thank you.
Participants may ask their questions in the through the mic as well. The unmute permission has been given to them.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Pritham sir. Thank you very much, madam. Okay, so I am thankful to all the participants for sharing their kind, precious feedback. So these notes will be given to all of you. Kindly explore it, and you can approach me. My contact details are with the organizers also. I am just sharing my contacts here also. You can approach me. I am just writing my phone number as well as mail ID as well. If you require to contact me, you can contact me anytime. I can do it in second half also, but doing it now about the scope. Okay, thank you all for your precious feedback.
Yes, sir. It was a wonderful session indeed with
Thank you,
practical
madam.
implementation of the code in Google Colabs. And I'm sure that all the participants have enjoyed this hands-on learning a lot. And now it's time to go for a short break. We will again join the same link at 11:45 and we'll learn more from Mr. Mukhopadhyay. And just a
Thank you.
gentle,
Thank you.
yeah, just a gentle reminder for all that there will be a test today to be conducted from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. It will be a 100 marks multiple choice type exam and will be taken through Google Form. The exam link will be posted in the WhatsApp group. The qualifying marks is 60%. And please remember that today's attendance will be taken at 1 p.m. All the participants should have at least 80% attendance altogether to receive the certificate from AICT. Thank you very much. We will again meet at 11:45 today. Thank you, sir.
Hello.